Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking In, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today I take you back to the roots, back to where it all began for me on this podcast, which is going out to look in. So I am currently, as you can tell, in nature, at a beautiful, beautiful lake that I like to walk around, contemplate, reflect, just spend some time immerse myself in the water, and just be. And it seemed a suitable location for this episode. And in general, it seemed suitable to do one of these solo ones again, just like how it all started for me back in the day, without video. It's just me and the microphone. Just me and the microphone and the truth of what is alive currently for me, on all levels. And given that I haven't shared anything on a podcast in a while, felt it like coming deep down from within that it probably is time to do one of these again. And as much as I love the conversations, I feel like as a direct thread between you, the listener, and myself, these are the most intimate containers that I can facilitate and share with you. And so here we go. The surrender experiment is still unfolding and actually currently in full swing. Surrendering to the overflowing amount of mosquitoes that are currently present in the area that I'm living in due to flooding. So we had some severe floodings in the area, and they led to like an overpopulation of mosquitoes, and just had a big impact on the land and the animals and inhabitants. And so that's what I'm currently dealing with as I'm walking here through the woods. But it's all fine, we surrender to it, we deal with it, and I'm still staying connected to you. So diving into this episode to see what's alive, going out looking in, Maxi, on this day. Okay, I'm checking in a little tired in the sense of exhaustion, really, after just doing a lot being in the doing again. Many projects that really light me up and fulfill me, let it be creative projects such as the guitar playing and singing. I got a rehearsal room now where I can set up my drums, which has been something that I have been longing for many years, which it's not an easy thing to do, because it just not only needs to be a space where you can put the instrument in, but also to actually play it in its full volume. So to be given that opportunity is a big milestone for me and a big gateway into my creative expression. And then there is a lot going on with men's work and my expansion into the world as someone who is offering spaces of multiple variations. I'm going to be speaking on this a little bit more in depth later on. But I'm just checking in with being exhausted a bit, and really a big expansion that constantly happens, and the relationship to the contraction that follows. So I noticed that for me personally, there's a big need for contraction after those big expansions. So whenever I'm really expanding and socializing and putting myself out there. Usually it is followed by periods of contraction, so really going inside and being a little bit of a hermit. And that leads me actually into the first topic that I wanted to talk about, which is the thing that is most alive within me currently. The biggest piece that I'm working on right now, which has a lot to do with exactly that, like the expansion and the contraction. So that would be the intention behind sharing anything. The underlying reason for being in the world and doing anything really, and the role of the ego within all of this. Someone who refers to himself as an extroverted introvert. That's how I often like to describe myself as. This has been something that I've been wrestling with for many, many years. Sometimes more consciously than other times, but it always has been on the back of my mind and heart, lingering, waiting to be looked at and addressed. So basically the question of like why to do anything, let it be why to enter relationships, why to do work in the world professionally, creatively, why to express basically, what's the intention behind that, and then to ask the question of like, is it coming from a place of fullness or is it coming from a place of lack? Is it tied to any conditions? Is it conditional? Is it an exchange from expanding, putting myself out and sharing as well, sharing. In return to somewhat expect, await, hope for something to return, for an exchange to happen, energetically, monetary, on whatever level, physically, whatever level basically you want to look at it. That's something I'm really, really digging into right now. And that's actually funny because when doing these, when speaking into a microphone, it's exactly what I'm doing. So I've been wrestling with coming on to the podcast and share really anything for a while now. It's an ever developing relationship, evolving relationship. I'm also really aware of you, the listener, and who I'm speaking to. Which is also a funny relationship because I always used to say at the beginning of the podcast, and I still try to do this now, is to just share from the heart and directly flow out and, have you in mind and heart, and basically not be influenced by potential expectations of the audience. Now as the audience gets bigger and more international and I don't know who will listen to this. It's really out of my control. So to be fine with that, and then potentially also taking into account like the people that I assume or can assume to listen to it, and how I feel about that, and then again, just like with acting, you do all the preparation, you do all of these contemplative exercises, and you think about this and you reflect upon it, and then you all throw it out of the window when it's time, and you hope that it'll do its work in the background. And that's how I like to think of these as well. So while knowing about all of these different influences and potential people listening, opinions, judgments, still returning to me as I am right now, today, in this very moment, and I just share an honest piece, whatever that is, whatever needs to come through. So these are some fields I'm penetrating right now, internally, externally, spiritually, emotionally. And yeah, the ego piece and the sharing piece, the death to the ego piece. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Feel like it's the one of, like, within all like the interpersonal work, or like personal work that I have been doing over the years. I have the feeling it sort of comes down to that, always, in some shape or form. Because truly, if you want to create something of meaning, feel like the less ego, the less intentional or subconscious exchange that you await in return, the less that is involved in your creation, the purer it is. Like, your creation is just more pure if it's coming from a place of wholeness within, right? And now all of the spiritual practices, or a lot of them, or personal work kind of things, they all lead to this inner wholeness, don't they? So I feel like we're all walking on the same road. And then when it comes to interacting with people, so let's take the example of relationships, right? So I've been confronted with a lot of relationship dynamics recently. And the question of, like, really being honest with myself about it, like, why am I entering this relationship? Why am I entertaining any sort of contact with a person? What is it that I'm trying to do here? Like, honestly. And it's just a one-on-one conversation, right? So I'll really be taking, I'll be looking myself in the mirror. I do these mirror meditations. I'm just looking at myself in the mirror, and it's just like, okay, Maxi, what is it? And then really being radically honest. What is it about this relationship that I want? And I figured, that, and that's the beauty about doing men's work for me personally and working with men, is that it's way less about becoming more perfect or doing things like perfectly all the time. It's so much more about, like, how to deal with yourself when not showing up perfectly, when not showing up as intended, when not showing up as the best version of yourself. Like, how do you deal with that? That is actually the work, I feel like, for me at least. And how I talk to myself, how I hold myself in moments of which used to be intense shame, like so much shame. It'd be so much shame of, like, not showing up a certain way, which again, funny enough, is coming from a place of ego. So, like, I am this man, upholding those kind of values and showing up with integrity and doing all of these things, which again is coming from a place of ego. So, to really hold space for myself in the moments of, like, where I'm following my needs, superficial needs at times, and really, reflecting upon my behavior, and then going into a relationship that is potentially based on some sort of energy exchange. So I need something from this person, attention, affection, validation, wow, yes, I'm seen by this person, and it feels really good. It opens me up momentarily, temporarily. And then to really be honest with that, like about it with myself. And I'm just like, okay, each message feels good. It feels really good. It feels really good. And this is a wonderful person. Objectively, just really beautiful person. But my intention with it, like, I do need something from them. There is some stuff involved there. And when I'm alone again, sitting on my bed at night before going to sleep, that's actually usually the parts where a lot of stuff comes up for me during the night or shortly before going to bed. I feel like somatically this is just like, I don't know, at least for me, being or have been in a relationship, or having been in a relationship for 7 years, that's just something that, I don't know, seems like imprinted into my system, that when laying your body down, usually there was somebody to lay down with, and to not have that anymore confront you with only you and yourself. And that leads me a little bit to the second point that I want to speak on. It's just a growing relationship with God, really, and the infinite and source, whatever you want to call it. I call it God. I shamelessly call it God now. It's a beautiful, sweet, subtle energy that I'm feeling. And the prayers that come when... It's funny, man. Like, it's just like admitting that it's something that I like to do, and that I like to invite into my life without shame. There was so much shame and so much things that actually were not even mine, projections of God and what that name comes with and that idea of God, that I lost my personal connection to it. It's just like, okay, well, but what is so far away from all the religions and stuff? What is my personal relationship to that thing, to that medium, to that energy? It's really an energy for me. That is God. What's my relationship to it? Can I make it my own? Can I really, shut down all the noises and focus on what I feel about it? And that makes for whole different kind of prayers and personal conversations with God. And it helps me to, you're just less alone, really. You're less alone, and I am less alone. I'm less alone, and I feel more understood. I feel guided. I feel held in the grief I'm feeling, in the pain that I'm feeling. And therefore, actually, it's just a segue into my own power then, ultimately. So, because yes, all is within, right? All is within. But there's stuff in the way of your power within. And so God just really helps me to access these parts of myself. Basically, that's what I'm saying. And it helps me, this relationship helps me to be more compassionate with myself and practice humility. And to remind myself that, and that's something I took and I am taking from the work with my coach and mentor. It's just I am. It's just I am, and nothing comes after that. It's just I am. I'm not Maxi, I'm not this body, I'm not any idea of a musician I am, or a creative, or a podcaster, somebody working somewhere, a father, a son. Okay, I'm not a father, but all of these things attached to my person, at the end of the day, I just am. And that's really a mantra and a prayer that leads one, I feel like, away from the ego a very direct way and reminds you that you just are. And that's also enough. Like, I am enough. However, and with whomever, and with all of the parts of myself that I felt so much shame for, that sometimes even was also tied to an ego. So whenever not showing up, like I said before, right? So even when not showing up in a way that I wanted, like, and then shaming myself for it, that also came subconsciously from a place of ego, because I wanted to be this man, you know. Now I understood what that means and all of this, and then it's just like, yeah, well, this is still ego right there, and I am a man of integrity. Right. I'm imperfect, that's what I am. I'm human, and I am. Right, so that's something I've been working on and working with. Death to the ego and the relationship to God. And then what I wanted to bring into the space, some of my recent favorite quotes, speak on them a little bit, share that and how that influences and influenced parts of my life. So that would be so regarding the shadow, Richard Rudd divides the shadow into 3 parts, and that would be allow, accept, embrace. That's the basic mechanic behind shadow work, as he puts it in the Gene Keys, and that is so much resonating with me. So when I'm looking at my own shadows, and the most prevalent, it's not even shadow in the terms of like also hurt and piece of internal work. One of the biggest pieces for me is the grief around the lost relationship 1.5 years ago. And that shadow, to me, can only be tackled through these 3 different stages. So first, just allow that grief and that loss of that relationship to be there with me. Can I really just allow it? The first step, it's really subtle, right? Just allow it. In the countless ways of expressing itself, the deep, like for me, just like so overwhelming, coming in waves, kind of sadness, completely out of context, in really weird timing, when I oftentimes least expect it, and for apparently no reason, but obviously for all the reasons. It just overwhelms me, and then it's entering my system, and you know, recently it came over me at work, and it's just like, wow, can I just first step, you know, not alchemize, not do any of this thing, just can I just allow it? And sometimes when you're, for example, at work, allowing it is pretty hard. It's pretty hard to allow it, because it takes up space internally, right? And it asks you to give it space, to really allow it. Okay, so now I'm moving past a construction site. That's what you get when you record live in the nature. The full experience. Yeah. So just allow. Second stage, accept. So that's deeper. That's way deeper already. Allow it to be there, and then it expresses itself, and it manifests in the body. Me, it's some heaviness in the chest, tightness in the chest, and the heart contracts, and it raises up to the eyes, until the tears come. And then acceptance of that. So then after the allowing, it's like the acceptance of like, okay, here we go. Can I accept this? And accept for me has a lot to do with how you speak about it in your mind, to your mind, in your heart, and to bring those voices and opinions and judgments into harmony with one another. And get rid of the story around it also, around the story of how I am supposed to be feeling or how I'm supposed to do anything, and then versus the actual reality of the situation. That's to me the acceptance piece. And then moving on, the third stage, to the embrace, to the really like the, and even further like integration. And so that's really then the conscious decision, at night when going to bed, feeling all of this or feeling some sort of sadness arising again, to then really embrace it, to then really, for me, music, big one for me, a segue to those inner worlds, and then to let the body move and embrace the sadness in its fullest expression and the grief, and then really let the tears come, let the somatic release come, whatever needs to come. Make it ceremonial. Also something that really helps me is to really extend the practice into the physical. So I will be, having some memory or some thing come up, a picture, a memory, a story, a song, whatever it is, and then to, let it go, but let it go physically, like really letting something release into the water, into a river, into the air, to burn something. All of these ceremonial things, just to me personally, are very healing because I see them manifest in front of me. And then it's just like it helps my system to integrate what I've been just thinking about and cognitively, because I intellectualize about, and to make it practical and to see it with my own eyes. It has a different imprint, I feel like, on the healing that's going on. So that's another piece with shadow work that I found very helpful. Allow, accept, embrace. Richard Rudd. All right. What else is here? Zoom in and obsess, or zoom out and observe. Really love that one. Taken from Rick Rubin's book, Creative Act, A Way of Being. Yeah. Zoom in and obsess, or zoom out and observe. I mean, that's, basic mindfulness teaching, I feel. Can we, take the seat of witness consciousness? Can we get out of reactivity and look at what's going on from a place of like what is actually going on? And at the end of the day, just like Michael Singer also so often points out, and which is also part of his personal practice, as I was and got to see at the Temple of the Universe, it's reminding oneself that we are indeed spinning on a planet, a rock in the middle of nowhere through space. That is what is actually happening. It's the reality, and everything else. It's like when he says. So when somebody asks you, "What did you do What did you do today?" It's like I did a 360. on planet Earth, 360 degrees traveled around the sun. That's what we do, objectively looking at it. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that zooming in and being lost in the reactivity of triggers, traumas, stories, again, part of us humans, totally fine, beautiful to feel all of this, and then zoom out and observe a little bit. Do both, just, I guess that's the invitation here, right? Invitation to myself as well, like, just do both. I feel like, with the shadow, right? First of all, allow the reactivity to be there. Allow the lower parts of yourself doing the talking. So Richard Rudd also often says in the mornings when he goes out and just sits, that's his form of meditation, going out in the very early morning before the sun rises. And you just sit and you just let the mind do its thing for the first couple of minutes. Just really let it talk, let it unfold, let it unravel, let it do all of these things, and then naturally calms down a little bit more, and you get into a more quieter place, and then it's time to zoom out and observe. And I feel like both are important. All right, what else do we have? Every man I know that doesn't cry cries in other ways. That's Jason Wilson. This is like the American author, and he's like somewhat of a martial arts guy as well, who does incredibly moving and important work, especially with young boys in difficult upbringings and neighborhoods. I feel like I don't know if he's touring with his gym, or if it's like a permanently installed thing, but anyway, he really helps young, mostly black boys in those very tough neighborhoods to connect to themselves and heal through martial arts. And there's videos of him doing this work with these children and these young boys, and it's just unbelievably moving. And that's basically, it's one of the essences, right, of so much of the work that we're doing as men, letting the tears come, and letting tears come, right, through the eyes, and grieving that way and processing pain that way. But then use it as a metaphor for crying in other ways, right? There's so many ways men can cry. Crying for attention through love seeking and validation seeking and sex and all of this. And I don't take myself out of this, personally, crying out in a form of addiction has never been something I did in the classical sense. So no, alcohol or drug abuse or anything along those lines. But video games, pornography, excessive consumption, even sports, excessive tendencies to work out and to shape your body into something and to become a version of yourself that doesn't really have intrinsically much to do with yourself, but more with a picture that you want to paint of yourself. All of these things, in one way or another, have been part of my journey as well. And so the crying of a man comes in many shapes and forms, right? And so to hold space for my tears and to also channel it in the way of tears, for me very personally, is so beautiful. Like I love crying. I love a good cry. And I love to facilitate a container for myself, a space for myself, in which that can really happen. And when I feel it coming up, it's really, again, making it a little bit, very intentional and ceremonial, and really go into it. I found driving very cathartic and therapeutic in that sense, especially now in the summer. Just in the evenings when the sun is setting slowly. There will be no destination. There will be just the road, the open road, the sun, all the colors, the air, the windows down, maybe some music and tears. And that's beautiful to me. That's, closing that ceremony then with parking the car and bringing it to a close as well. It's about like also then, then standing upright again, right? And coming back into not wallowing in it, like address it. And we talked about this with Anton on the podcast. Anton Mackie from Sacred Sons, doing a lot of yoga work. And the posture of the hips, and how men, when overly in their emotions or in their sadness and grief, how that affects the posture and the hip posture, and how that tilt to the front can also basically contribute to an outpouring of yourself into the world, a constant purging and oversharing and overbearing onto the world with your stuff. So I feel like it's coming into the understanding that as a man, for me, it's about expressing and holding space for myself in intentionally set places, ceremonial places where for me it is safe to express. The car is a beautiful location to do so, because it's like a moving house, isn't it? A moving room, which I can shut down entirely, rolling up the windows, and it's soundproof. I can shout and don't scare anyone, or because when you go into a forest, even then, if there are other people around, and you're like doing loud shouting, you might, it might have people worried, out of genuine concern. So, and that is affecting me sometimes when doing some somatic stuff or shouting and something along those lines in nature. If it's not complete remote nature, or especially if you're a woman shouting alone in the forest, can really raise genuine concern for people who, are caring, and are like, okay, what's going on? So anyway, make this way bigger than it is. I just wanted to say that the car for me is a safe place, that I like to go to when doing that. All right, crying of men. What else do we have? The way to heaven is down. Really like that one. Also stemming from Richard Rudd. And that has a lot to do with being grounded in our spiritual pursuits, especially, I feel like. Transcendence seems to be something that seems very worth pursuing or achieving, escaping from this reality. And again, the grief of men comes in many shapes and forms, and just take alcohol. That's definitely one way to transcend temporarily into a different reality. Taking drugs, whatever it is, to elevate your human experience into a place that is most of the time, I feel like, going upwards, right? So heaven is been is being looked at as something that is above us. But truly, it's down, isn't it? So Milena Rasputnik, who I also had on the podcast, a German episode, she talks about that a lot, and also the movement of energies tied to the different, like, masculine, feminine energies, and the masculine energy is some energy that is moving to the front and upwards, and the feminine as one that goes backwards and down, into the earth, into the womb space. And what kind of more suitable and more eloquent and beautiful picture than that? It's just like the energy going down and back into the womb space for the grounding, and therefore for the transcendence into the physical reality that we are living in, and this beautiful vessel of the body that we're living in. So the way to heaven is down, because I feel like all wisdom that is gained through practices that are outside of being rooted, grounded, they need to be so severely and well integrated to be of use in our physical reality. So I'm also relating that to psychedelic experiences without, and I explicitly say that, without having done or having experienced one myself, just because it hasn't been calling me, or hasn't called me, that's proper English, yet. And so I listen to that. I feel like, I read that in a book somewhere. What quote was that? So basically, if you have those experiences, and even in a monastery that I was meditating in, when really reaching the higher states in meditation, is always about the integration of that experience, right? So without that, without being grounded, the way to heaven is really an experience of temporary bliss. Is really just that. It's just a temporary experience of bliss. Yeah. So I'm back on the street, as you can tell. I'm just walking here. Just got out of the forest. Now back to the entrance of the lake. And also using this as a closure of this portal here. That was lovely to share a little bit about what's alive for me. And I'm also tuning into how I feel about it. It's just like some judgments arising. I can tell that. Have I shared enough? Is this interesting enough? Is this of any use, of any value? Again, going back to the intention behind my sharing, and having really retrieved for weeks now, I felt like the energy of this podcast has been coming from a different place, and it came from a couple of times in the past. I take responsibility for that, and I see that with compassion and empathy towards myself. There will be more interview podcasts coming. I got some scheduled. The thing is, just the bigger the podcast gets, some guests I have on and I really enjoy talking to and wanted to have on are now in reach, which is beautiful. But that being said, the coordination of these podcasts gets a little bit harder, because the schedule of these bigger guests is just very tight, and it just asks for some longer preparations and timelines to consider, and therefore like a weekly release schedule is nearly impossible to fulfill, especially with all the other stuff that's going on in my life. I'm in a beautiful place, I have to say, internally and externally. I'm good. I'm really doing good. I'm taking care of my body to the best of my abilities. I'm moving a lot outside. I'm in the mountains, and in the area that I'm living in. It's just an unbelievable gift, and I'm super grateful for it. Which is not something I say, but really more also what I feel. So I am able to feel gratitude for what also I have built, really, since the old life, back in Potsdam and Berlin, and all of this chapter has ended. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to whatever energies came through me that allowed me to do all of these things and initiate the move and finding a new job and the setup of my life and all the opportunities that now are very organically are arising. Let me speak on that for a second as well, about the men's work I'm offering one-on-one men's work sessions, online and offline, mostly online because it's just logistically easier to facilitate. But this is a sacred space for men to step into. I'm not a healer, I'm not a therapist, I'm not somebody who's trying to fix you or does any of these things. This is a safe space that I'm consciously creating, and I see that as my main responsibility. I got questions, I don't have answers, I have questions, and the answers come from within you. So if you want to enter this space, you can do so. My Instagram bio, there's a link to a Calendly scheduling formula, and you can just put your information in and schedule a call. That's a very easy way to connect with me one-on-one. I am doing an online men's group which is currently full, where we're meeting every 4 weeks. Just a beautiful group of men, and that really allows me to get my reps in. Been doing that for many months now, actually. Time flies. And I also started to initiate my first men's group in person, which just got initiated this last Tuesday, a couple of days ago. And it takes place in the Chiemgau area, which is in Bavaria, in the area that I'm living in right now. So if you are tuning in from somewhere around there, Munich, between Munich and Salzburg, somewhere, more details can be accessed. Just send me a DM and I get you more information on the men's group in person. I'm playing a lot of shows, a lot of live gigs around the area here, playing a lot of music, guitar and singing, and looking forward to also bring some more men's work in combination with the podcast. And I don't know if it's solely going to be men's work, but just some format of an event, of a workshop, retreat. I don't know yet, but doing that with a combination of a live podcast. So this will all be under the umbrella of going out looking in the retreat, the workshop, whatever, and really do that in person to bring the podcast family together, just as we did with Vince back in the day in Berlin. Do a live podcast with a guest and then potentially have him or her do some work with some participants, maybe 1-2 days, 3 days, depending on who can make it. I feel like that could be a beautiful thing. So those are just some thoughts that I have, and they can ripen now. Speak them into existence. Let's see what happens. All right. I hope you're all moving well wherever you are, wherever this is reaching you. just overlooking here right now the mountains and the lake, and it's just beautiful. So I'm very, very grateful to be able to do this, and I hope you are gentle with yourselves wherever you are, and allow, accept, embrace. And the allowing can take a long time, so don't rush it. Don't rush the shadow. Don't rush the hurt. Don't rush the grief. Let it come. Let it come slowly. All right. Sending you all so much love, and speak to you next time on Going Out, Looking In.